Aisha, why do you hide your face behind that mask every day? Amina asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Aisha sighed, her eyes heavy with sadness. Amina, I want to know if someone will love me for who I am, not for how I look. But you are so beautiful, Aisha. Why would you do this to yourself? Amina's voice trembled, confused by her friend's choice. Aisha shook her head. Beauty has brought me nothing but trouble, Amina. Men come to me only to be dazzled by my looks. They don't see me, the real me. I want to be loved for my heart, not my face. Amina nodded slowly, trying to understand. But what if no one loves you because of the mask? What if they think you're ugly and leave you alone? Aisha's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. Then I will know the truth. I would rather be alone than be with someone who loves me only for my appearance. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Aisha wore the mask every time she stepped out of her house. The mask was old, with rough edges, and it made her look unappealing. The villagers whispered about her as she passed by, pointing and laughing. Why does she wear that thing? She's just trying to get attention, they said. A girl like that will never find a husband, others added, shaking their heads. But Aisha didn't care. She walked through the village with her head held high, ignoring the cruel words. She kept telling herself that this was the only way to find true love. One day, as Aisha was fetching water from the stream, a young man named Musa approached her. He was kind, with a gentle smile that reached his eyes. Let me help you with that, Musa offered, taking the heavy pot from her hands. Aisha hesitated but allowed him to help. They walked together in silence until they reached her home. Thank you, Aisha said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Musa smiled again. It's nothing. I'm happy to help. Aisha couldn't help but notice how different Musa was from the other men in the village. He didn't stare at her mask or ask why she wore it. He didn't laugh or make jokes. Instead, he treated her with respect, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Days passed, and Musa began to visit Aisha more often. They would sit outside her house and talk for hours. Aisha found herself laughing at his stories, forgetting about the mask on her face. But deep down, a fear began to grow in Aisha's heart. What if Musa only liked her because he couldn't see her real face? What if, once he saw her beauty, he would become like all the others? One evening, as the sun was setting, Musa turned to Aisha, his face serious. Aisha, I want to ask you something. Her heart raced. What is it? Why do you wear that mask? I've heard the villagers talk, but I want to hear it from you. Aisha's hands trembled as she touched the edges of the mask. She took a deep breath and finally spoke. I wear it because I want to find someone who loves me for who I am inside, not just for my looks. Musa looked at her, his eyes soft with understanding. Aisha, I don't care what's under that mask. I care about the person you are. You're kind, strong, and you have a heart that shines brighter than anything I've ever seen. Tears welled up in Aisha's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. But what if you don't like what you see when the mask comes off? Musa took her hand gently. I've already seen what matters most. The rest doesn't change how I feel. Aisha's heart was torn. She wanted to believe him, but the fear of being rejected again held her back. The pain of past betrayals echoed in her mind, making her question if she could ever truly be loved for who she was. I need time, Musa, Aisha whispered, her voice breaking. I'm not ready to take off the mask yet. Musa nodded, his grip on her hand tightening for a moment before he let go. Take all the time you need, Aisha. I'll be here, waiting. As Musa walked away, Aisha watched him until he disappeared into the distance. Her heart ached with a mix of hope and fear, wondering if she had made the right choice. Would Musa still be there when she was ready? Or would he, like the others, leave when he finally saw what was hidden beneath the mask? Aisha felt her heart grow heavier with uncertainty and fear, unsure if she was destined to remain alone, hidden behind the mask forever. Weeks passed, and Aisha kept her distance from Musa. She still wore the mask every day, even when she was alone in her room. She had become so used to it that she could hardly remember what her own face looked like. Amina noticed the change in her friend and couldn't stay silent any longer. One evening, she visited Aisha at her home, determined to talk some sense into her. "Aisha, why are you avoiding Musa? He's the only man in this village who treats you with respect," Amina said, her voice laced with concern. Aisha stared at the ground, unable to meet Amina's eyes. "I'm scared, Amina. What if he changes his mind when he sees my face? What if he's just like the others?" Amina placed a hand on Aisha's shoulder, squeezing gently. "You'll never know if you keep hiding behind that mask. You can't live your whole life in fear." Aisha's voice trembled as she replied, "But what if I'm not enough? What if, after everything, I'm still alone?" Amina didn't have an answer. She could see the pain in her friend's eyes, but she also knew that Aisha was the only one who could make the decision to reveal her true self. That night, Aisha lay awake in bed, the mask still on her face. Her mind was filled with doubts and fears, and she could barely close her eyes without seeing Musa's face, filled with disappointment. Maybe it's better this way, she thought, trying to convince herself. Maybe it's better to be alone than to be hurt again. But her heart ached with loneliness, and the walls she had built around herself seemed to be closing in, making it harder to breathe. The next morning, Aisha decided to go for a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear her mind. As she walked through the forest, she stumbled upon a small, quiet clearing she had never seen before. The trees surrounded it like a protective barrier, and the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a soft glow on the ground. Aisha sat down on a large stone in the center of the clearing, closing her eyes and letting the warmth of the sun wash over her. For a moment, she felt at peace, as if the worries of the world had melted away. But then, she heard a voice. "Aisha." She opened her eyes, startled, and saw Musa standing at the edge of the clearing. His eyes were filled with concern, and his usually warm smile was absent. "Musa, how did you find me?" Aisha asked, her voice barely audible. "I've been looking for you," Musa replied, taking a few steps closer. "You've been avoiding me, and I need to know why." Aisha's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. She could only sit there, frozen, as Musa came closer and closer. "Please, Aisha, talk to me," Musa pleaded, stopping just a few feet away. "I don't understand what's happening. Did I do something wrong?" Aisha's eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. "No, Musa, it's not you. It's me. I'm so scared." "Scared of what?" Musa asked softly, his voice filled with confusion and concern. "Scared that you'll see my face and leave me," Aisha whispered, her voice trembling with fear. "Scared that you'll be like all the others who only cared about my beauty." Musa's expression softened, and he knelt down in front of her, gently taking her hands in his. "Aisha, I told you before, I don't care about what's under that mask. I care about who you are inside." Aisha's tears spilled over, and she quickly pulled her hands away, covering her face with them. "But what if I'm not enough, Musa? What if you see my face and decide I'm not worth it?" Musa's heart ached as he watched her cry. He wanted to comfort her, to tell her that she was more than enough, but he knew that words wouldn't be enough to erase the pain she was feeling. "Aisha, please, let me in," Musa whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Let me see the real you. I promise, I won't leave you." But Aisha couldn't bring herself to do it. The fear of rejection was too strong, the pain of past betrayals too deep. She shook her head, backing away from him, her heart breaking with every step. I can't, Musa. I'm sorry, she choked out, before turning and running back towards the village, leaving Musa alone in the clearing, his heart heavy with sorrow and confusion. As she ran, Aisha's tears blurred her vision, and she could barely see where she was going. She stumbled and fell, her knees scraping against the rough ground, but she quickly got up and kept running, desperate to escape the pain that was consuming her. When she finally reached her home, she collapsed on her bed, sobbing uncontrollably. The mask pressed against her skin, a constant reminder of the walls she had built around herself. But even as she cried, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered, "What if Musa really means it? What if he truly cares about you, no matter what?" Aisha shook her head, trying to silence the voice, but it only grew louder, filling her with more doubt and fear. What if the voice whispered again, leaving her to wonder if she had just thrown away the only chance she had at true love? As the days passed, Aisha found herself consumed by the thought of Musa. She knew she couldn't keep running away forever. The pain of living in fear was becoming too much to bear. Aisha decided to visit the clearing where she had last seen Musa. She knew she had to confront her fears, no matter how terrifying it felt. She couldn't let this chance slip away, not if Musa truly loved her for who she was. When she arrived, she found Musa sitting on the same stone she had sat on before. He looked deep in thought, his face serious, but when he saw her, his expression softened. "Aisha," Musa said quietly, standing up and taking a step toward her. Aisha's heart pounded in her chest, but this time, she didn't run. She took a deep breath and looked into Musa's eyes, gathering the courage she had been searching for. "Musa, I've been so scared," she began, her voice trembling. "I've been hiding behind this mask because I was afraid no one would ever love me for who I really am." Musa stepped closer, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know, Aisha. And I've been waiting, hoping that one day you would trust me enough to show me the real you." Aisha felt tears welling up in her eyes again, but this time, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of hope, of relief. Slowly, she reached up and began to untie the strings of the mask. Her hands shook as she removed the mask, revealing her face to Musa for the first time. She kept her eyes closed, too scared to see his reaction. The silence was overwhelming, and she feared the worst. But then she felt a gentle touch on her cheek, and she opened her eyes to find Musa smiling at her, his eyes filled with warmth and love. "Aisha, you are even more beautiful than I imagined," Musa whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "But it's not your beauty that I love. It's you, your kindness, your strength, your heart. That's what I've fallen in love with." Aisha's breath caught in her throat, and she felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had spent so long fearing this moment, and now that it was here, she realized how much she had been holding herself back. "Do you really mean that, Musa?" Aisha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Musa nodded, taking her hands in his. "I've never meant anything more in my life. Aisha, I love you, not because of how you look, but because of who you are." Aisha felt a tear roll down her cheek, but this time, it was a tear of joy. She had finally found someone who saw her for who she truly was, someone who loved her not just for her beauty but for her heart. "I love you too, Musa," Aisha whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Musa's smile widened, and he pulled her into a gentle embrace. Aisha closed her eyes and rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. As they stood there in the clearing, the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over them. Aisha knew that the journey hadn't been easy, and there would still be challenges ahead, but she also knew that with Musa by her side, she could face anything. Together, they walked back to the village, hand in hand, leaving the mask behind, forgotten in the clearing. Aisha no longer needed it. She had found something far more precious, true love. They continued to build on their love and acceptance for each other. They got married, lived happily together, had children and grandchildren. This story teaches us that true love comes from seeing and appreciating a person for who they truly are, not just for their outward appearance. It reminds us that hiding behind masks, whether literal or figurative, can keep us from finding real connections and happiness. Embracing who we are and having the courage to show our true selves can lead to the most genuine and fulfilling relationships. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more heartwarming and captivating tales, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. We'll see you in the next video.